And welcome back, everyone, to Sports on Tap. Want to welcome in Josh Duffy, Dick Sean Duffy. I'm Rob Troutman. And our Ohio high school football coverage is presented by RRT Productions.
Hey-o!
We're here at the J
Shameless
Studio.
plug.
Studio J.
No, Ed, that's an official sponsor.
Yeah, Ed.
You recognize.
Oh, my bad.
We got a few sponsors on the show this week.
I'm glad that RRT decided to step up and help us out a little bit there.
That's
yeah,
right.
It was a tough negotiation.
It was.
With that shrewd businessman.
Whoever RRT,
right.
in fact, is.
That's right. We'll,
who wishes to remain nameless.
That's right. But welcome in,
Sitting to my
everyone. Welcome in, and we're going to recap Week 5 here of the high school season coming up, and also look ahead to Week 6, give our conference MVPs, which are presented by Z's Cream and Bean. And we'll go over those a little bit later in the show. But, guys, Week 5 is done.
It's in the books.
It's in the books. Briefly, what did you guys see from Week 5 that you were either impressed with a team or player, or what did you take from Week 5 in any conference, really? Or your own conference, for that matter.
I saw the cream rise to the top, I think, in my particular conference. This week really did allow for two teams to really kind of set themselves on a collision course later on in the season, for which should determine who wins that conference. So I thought it was a statement game by both those teams, and I'll get into that more in the recap and the look ahead. But that was the one thing that I really saw over all the games I was watching was two teams in the American Division kind of set themselves apart.
The major takeaway from my division is the Suburban League National Division is teams that were supposed to take care of business took care of business. And there is a very clear divide between the top 4 teams in the division and the bottom 4 teams in the division. Although, they had a little bit of the two of the not so good teams took on each other, and I had my thoughts about who was going to win that one to begin with, and I was actually right on it. So knock on wood there. We'll see what happens as the season progresses, especially really getting into conference play here in the national division. But I'm gonna kind of go with Sean. There's two teams that are, in my mind, head and shoulders above the rest, and everyone else is just playing for third place.
Josh, what'd you take out of the Greater Cleveland Conference?
Well, do you want me to go right into the recap, or should we just?
You can if you'd like.
All right, well, I'll get into it, because what I took away from Week 5 of my conference is the fact that the conference got a little bit tighter after Week 5. Starting first on Saturday, Menor with a relatively easy 35-12 victory over Shaker Heights. Shaker Heights drops to 3-2. Menor improves to 4-1. Tadas Tatarunas was 19 of 25, 216 yards, but he threw 5 touchdown passes. Menor wide receiver Malik Porter had 6 receptions for 60 yards, 2 touchdowns. And for Shaker Heights, Micah Hills with 5 receptions for 67 yards and a touchdown. So, pretty status quo game for Menor. Shaker Heights coming down to earth now, lately getting into conference play, still with a nice record 3-2. Another big game was on Saturday. Euclid improved to 3-2 with a 48-36 win over Solon. This was a back-and-forth battle. Solon's record drops to 3-2. Chris Collins, though, for Euclid, 31 rushing attempts, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns. He is an MVP candidate.
I'll say, goodness.
Solon running back Javon Avery also had 2 touchdown rushes in that game. Solon quarterback Johnny Mooney, 25 of 43, 314 yards, 4 touchdowns. He tried whatever he could to have his Comets defeat the Euclid Panthers, but in the end, Euclid prevailed on top. Now, we were talking about beforehand, I had to congratulate Coach Ed Dick on the Brunswick Blue Devils' big victory, revenge game over Elyria, 26-13. Brunswick with its first victory of the season. They improved to 1-4. Elyria drops to 3-2. Nick Horton is an MVP candidate. 20 rushes, 97 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also added 122 yards in the passing game. So But you got to give credit to the Brunswick defense. They did a very good job. And as we talked about last week for the Brunswick Blue Devils, this was a game that they circled on their calendar. You know, Elyria won last year on a quote-unquote Hail Mary at the end. Now Brunswick came in. It was a homecoming game for the Blue Devils. They came out and they played really well, and they notched their first victory. My spotlight game of the week, though, went to Strongsville and Medina. Strongsville came out and just laid a whooping on the Medina Battling Bees. Strongsville improves to 4-1. Medina drops to 3-2. The big thing that I got out of this is Medina coach Dan Sutherland in the Medina County Gazette had one big quote, and it kind of sets a precedent of where he was after this game. He said, maybe our kids and our coaches read the press clippings, quote unquote. So he was not happy with his team and his coaching performance. Strongsville, on the other hand, was just an offensive dynamite juggernaut. 89 total plays they ran during that game, 532 yards of total offense, and they led at the half 28-7. Our boy, Strongsville running back Zach
Con!
41 rushing attempts, 203 yards, and a touchdown. Medina running back Jimmy Dow, which back-to-back MVP. Back-to-back MVPs for me was only held to 10 rushing attempts, 6 yards. He did have an 86-yard TD reception, however. And Medina quarterback John Curtis was 16 of 30 for 260 yards and 3 touchdowns. So even though I had this as my spotlight game, it wasn't that much of a game. But Strongsville, people have to start taking these Mustangs seriously now. They're a very good team. Larry Laird has that team playing really well, and led by Zach Kahn. I mean, the guy is a workhorse. He is just – I'm sorry. I didn't know I had to do that every time.
The first time we started doing this, you called us out for not doing it.
Yeah, you let me down.
Ipso facto. We haven't let you down since. That was like 3 weeks ago.
In fact, you've let us down.
Yeah, I did. I'm sorry. But back to this game, you know, Medina came in maybe a little high on their horses. Who knows?
A smidge. A smidge.
That's coming from the source right there. No, I'm just you know, Coach Dan Sutherland not happy with his team's performance, not happy with the defense at all. I mean, to run 89 plays, Strongsville just controlled this game from the very beginning. Medina really didn't even have a chance.
Yeah, I think you look at Strongsville. They've really I think Zach, what's his name?
Con.
Hot Mike.
You know, I think he has really stepped up as a leader on that team and kind of taken Strongsville a little bit by the shoulders. I mean, obviously there's other players that have stepped in and done a nice job. Their defense has really stepped up. But, you know, when it counts, I mean, he's gotten a ton of yards, and on top of that, he's scored some touchdowns.
I mean,
so great job by him.
Take away the yards, 41 rushing attempts. I mean, did they even try to throw the ball? I mean, at what point do you say – I mean, if you're a defensive coach, do you pull your guys aside and say, hey, fellas, Khan's killing us out there.
Yeah.
This
Tackle
just
him.
in.
Yeah, he's going to get the ball. You know how I know? He got it 40 other times. He's going to get it 41 more.
My God. Yeah, you know, you're right. I mean, about Coach Sutherland astutely pointing out that his team may have read the press clippings a little too much because they have been pretty vocal about how their performance has been up to this point. And for a team that hasn't really done much in 4 years, it's a lot of, you know, I understand you're excited. I get it. You know, they're kids. You know, they don't know any better. You know, I completely understand that. But as a coaching staff, you kind of gotta ground them a little bit so this doesn't happen.
Well, I think we can set this as an example too that not only does it happen in high school, but it obviously happens in the pros. With Coach Mike Patton of the Browns saying the same exact thing with his defense this past week. But you got to give credit to Strongsville. I mean, they are definitely a player in the GCC next to Mena right now. And then if you look, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams now at 3-2. 2 teams at 4-1, and then you have Brunswick at 1-4, who coming off a victory now is not going to be just a pushover. You know, once this young team gets a taste of victory, they know how it is. It's important for them to take that next step and kind of react positively to a victory. And if they do that, which I'm confident Luke Beal will set an example for those kids, not to read the press clippings, and they're going to be a tough team to beat.
Well, and, you know, they're still learning a new offense, so they're starting to get maybe a little more comfortable with that offense and starting to kick in. But I think one thing you're noticing with these games, I mean, some of these running backs are carrying the ball 30, 40, 50 times in a game. I think it shows their durability. The difference between that in college or the NFL, I mean, it's obviously a slight difference in high school football. I mean, these guys are really taking some carries.
Well, and you obviously want to get the ball into the hands of your best player, and it's a lot easier to do that in a high school scheme than it is in a college and a pro scheme because, I mean, high schools you maybe have, some teams have a couple studs that are just better than everybody else, and it just makes sense. There's no reason to not give them the ball. There's no reason to put them on a pitch count per se with the amount of touches that the team's going to get or that a player's going to get.
Well, I think as I was looking at it and listening to Josh's recap, one thing that I kind of took, as we mentioned off the top of the show, was what our takeaways were. And for me, it was this week was kind of the setup week, looking ahead in the schedule. You don't want to get ahead in your schedule, but how great is that Strongsville-Mentor matchup going to be now when they play each other? Because now you have two teams that basically, I mean, Mentor's been putting teams on notice since the beginning of the season. Strongsville's been kind of back, you know what I mean? But now that's a force win right there. So now you're setting up an absolutely fabulous matchup between a team like Strongsville, who's on the come, and Mentor, who's trying to hold serve in that division and really trying to make sure that they secure points. So that's setting out to be a really great matchup.
Yeah, and that's happening. That's happening. That big matchup, what's turning into a big matchup, will happen October 16th when Strongsville plays Solon. But in this conference, you got to take it week by week. You can't take any game. You can't look ahead at any rate. But
but for the fans, I mean, for the
it's nice to start. We're starting to get into that point of the season where you're starting to look at possible points and seedings and all that stuff. So it's getting into the meat and potatoes part of the season, and I love it.
And now we'll move to the Southwestern Conference, and I want to welcome in Brent Barczyk, who's listening to our broadcast.
Hey, Brent.
Hey, live on
friend of
Mixler.
show.
So thanks, Brent, for listening. We appreciate it.
I hope your trip to the Amazon was good, buddy.
All right, let's move to the Southwestern Conference. We'll start off where Avon traveled to Westlake, and Avon was ranked 11th last week in the Cleveland.com Top 25 poll, and they showed it. Avon led 14-7 after one period, which was a close game, and Westlake was in the game, but Avon broke it open with 3 touchdowns in the second quarter. They took a 35-13 halftime lead. Quarterback Jake Sopko led the way for the Eagles, throwing a touchdown pass of 8 yards and also scoring on a 14-yard run. Westlake did have a nice highlight as Westlake's running back, Jaquan Hardy, ran for 26 yards for a touchdown. They cut the lead to 28-13 at one point with a minute 36, and that was before half. But Avon then would answer, and they rolled 56-13 at Westlake, and Westlake is still winless at 0-5. Avon is 4-1 on the year. Now, moving to North Olmsted at Lakewood, this one started off pretty close. Jack Wheatrey from Lakewood, the quarterback, with a 24-yard touchdown pass to Michael Goolsby for the Rangers. The point after was blocked. North Olmsted led 7-6 with 11:18 left in the second quarter, but the Rangers actually were down 14-12 at one point. They mixed in a 2-point conversion. And quarterback Christian Ammons, though, for North Olmsted, this guy has been sensational this year with a 3-yard pass to his favorite target and wide receiver Ryan Coleman as he turned a 3-yard pass into a 73-yard touchdown catch and run. North Olmsted led 28-12 with 11:04 left in the fourth quarter, and that's how it would end. 28-12. North Olmsted now improves to 3-2. Lakewood still at 0-5. Ryan Coleman had 3 more touchdown receptions from Christian Ammons, and the Eagles will host North Ridgeville on Friday. All right, let's continue moving on as Avon Lake traveled to North Ridgeville. And North Ridgeville, Demario McCall continues to be successful for the Rangers when he's completely healthy. He had 2 early touchdowns, and the Rangers started off 14-0 over Avon Lake, and then Cam Bright with an 88-yard touchdown for the Rangers, and it ended up being 21-0 in the first quarter. Demario McCall with a 76-yard touchdown run on the last play of the half. The Rangers then led 28-0.
The last play of the half? How do you let that happen?
Last play of the half, Demario McCall, the 76-yard touchdown run, probably looking to just run it and say whatever happens, happens. But when you have Demario McCall, you just never know what can happen, and he took it to the house.
Point.
North Ridgeville wins 42-14. Avon Lake falls to 2-3. North Ridgeville 4-1. And one thing nice about North Ridgeville, Demario McCall finished with 213 yards on 14 carries.
I'm assuming he's an MVP
3
candidate.
rushing TDs and 1 receiving. So he had 4 touchdowns, and he is a MVP candidate. Now, Olmsted Falls traveled to Amherst, and, man, this was one of those tough physical matchups. Late in the third quarter, the Bulldogs were clinging to a 16-14 lead when Amherst coach Bill Fishley decided to pin Olmsted Falls deep in its own territory as opposed to trying to convert on 4th and 2. The punt was down inside the 5-yard line with 11 seconds remaining in the third quarter, and the Bulldogs used a 15-play, 83-yard drive that chewed up 5:21 on the play clock. Junior Ricky Castragano, 29-yard field goal increased the Olmsted Falls lead to 19-14, and that gave the Comets 6:50 to mount a comeback, but that did not happen. The final score, Olmsted Falls 19, Amherst 14. Olmsted Falls now 4-1 on the year. Amherst at 0-5. Spencer Linville, the junior fullback, he picked up 38 of his game-high 207 rushing yards in the fourth quarter drive that chewed up most of the clock and sent the Comets to their 5th defeat in as many games this season. And also in that game, senior running back Cooper Cottrell rushed for a season-high 141 yards on 18 carries. And I haven't seen this yet this year, but an inside linebacker, Todd Hastings, led the defense of Amherst with 24 tackles in the game.
24? My God.
So,
chocolate
yeah,
milk.
you know what? He's an
He
MVP
did some
candidate
work.
along with Cooper Cottrell. They're on the losing end, but Olmsted Falls will host Berea-Midpark next week, which should be a really good game. Now, my spotlight game was Midview at Berea-Midpark, and this game was interesting because it started off, Dustin Crum was quarterback. Early on in the game, he really had a hard time trying to find people to get open. Berea-Midpark's defense actually sacked him and made him run all over the place. He ended up getting hurt early in this game after taking some hard hits. So the wide receiver, Logan Bolin, came in and started at quarterback for them. Bolin threw an interception before half as the Middies actually trailed 14-7, thanks to a Nick Gassman 32-yard touchdown to wide receiver Brett Swinnerton. And that I thought was interesting. And well, let me speak here. Hold on. Berea-Midpark was up 14-7 at half, and I was interested to see what Midview would do not having their starting quarterback in. So Logan Bolin opened the second half with a solid drive that was capped off by Alec Forer's 1-yard touchdown run. The junior rushed for 131 yards on 22 carries, including the game-tying touchdown early in the third quarter. Bolin did throw 2 interceptions, but finished with 91 yards passing and 65 yards rushing, and his 1-yard touchdown run in the third quarter put Midview in the lead for good as Midview wins 24-14 over Berea-Midpark. Midview now the sole possession of first place at 5-0. Berea-Midpark falls to 4-1. Sean Epps rushed for 87 yards and a touchdown for the Titans, and Midview was ranked third in Cleveland.com's top 25. Midview will host Westlake next Friday, while Berea-Midpark will travel to Olmsted Falls. And, guys, when you look at now the conference and the standings, now it looks like Midview has kind of parted ways with everyone. They're 5-0, 4-0 in conference. And now you have Berea-Midpark, Avon, Olmsted Falls, and North Ridgeville all at 4-1, 3-1 in conference. So there's kind of a section of teams there. North Olmsted at 3-2, 2-2 in conference. Avon Lake 2-3, 2-2, and then Westlake, Amherst, and Lakewood are 0-5, 0-4 in conference, and round out the Southwestern Conference. And it's going to be fun to watch this conference, especially the 4-1 teams. Avon, Olmsted Falls, North Ridgeville, and those Berea-Midpark in there too at 4-1. North Olmsted is still a team I think that can surprise some people. I mean, they almost took out Avon early and fell and had a pretty bad loss to Midview, but Berea-Midpark, beat North Ridgeville, so that's North Ridgeville's loss. And up and down, I mean, it's one of those conferences that's going to be tough, and some teams are going to start taking out teams coming on later in the year.
Yeah, it seemed like North Olmsted's going to have a little bit of tough sledding coming forward to finish the year. I mean, they still got to take on Ridgeville and Berea-Midpark and Olmsted Falls. I mean, so if you're looking at a possible 6 team to make the playoffs out of that conference, North Olmsted's going to have to do some work. If they can get one of those 3 games coming forth, I think they have a pretty good chance to maybe sneak in as an 8 seed in their respective region. And like you said, I mean, the 4-1 teams, they're just going to be battling out right now, for playoff positioning and to see where they end up in the conference. I mean, this is a very deep conference. The top 5 teams are not separated by much. Each team has a playmaker, or at least one playmaker on it that can make a difference. And we saw the depth of Midview a little bit with their quarterback. Crum gets hurt. They bring in the receiver. Actually, I saw the game. It was on like 11:30, I think, on Friday night.
TO, I think.
He actually had a punt return that he almost took to the house. And it was incorrectly ruled out of bounds by the referee at like the 40. So I mean, they could have started that drive a lot closer. But it's a great athlete and great depth on the middies there to know that if their quarterback gets hurt against a tough opponent on the road, they were able to manufacture a victory like that. So I mean, Midview really showed me a lot against a quality opponent and in doing what they need to do.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that stood out to me during that whole thing was just how good Midview is, I think, from top to bottom in every position. It's a daunting task to take on a team like Midview. That that program is really strong. And looking at it now, like I said, I don't think anyone, I mean, unless it's almost in that situation where, it's going to be up to the coaching staff at Midview to keep them on point and realize you got to show up every day. You can't just put your helmet out there and expect people to just bow down to it. But if they take care of business like they've been doing all fall, I don't see any team beating them, going into the playoffs, and I wouldn't want to be the one playing them in the playoffs at any point in time if they're all healthy coming back.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. That conference, like you said, is up in the air. But now let's move to the Suburban League and go over to Mr. Sean Duffy as he has the American Conference.
Division.
America.
Yeah. Starting out in Copley and Revere, and Copley, after that big win last week against Barberton, did not fall off at all. Went into Revere and basically hung 54 on Revere and did not allow Revere to get into the end zone. Austin Brenner out of Copley went 13 of 14, 399 yards,
Jeez.
6
What?
touchdowns. He threw 2 touchdowns to 2 separate receivers. Chan Park had 2 touchdowns, and Daniel Esther had 2 touchdowns. This was a statement game, and as I mentioned off the top of the show, this is one of those teams that basically asserted themselves in the American Division right now, saying, hey, we're here to stay. It was a very, very impressive effort by Copley. They should be really proud. And, again, you pitch a shutout. You know what I mean? That's something to hang your hat on for a defense as well. Moving on to Kent Roosevelt and Talmadge. And let's give a big hand for Talmadge. They got off the schneid this week. Ended up taking out Kent Roosevelt 17-7. Nate Adolph had 39 carries, 217 yards, and a touchdown. Almost like our boy Khan. 39 times. I don't even know if they threw the ball. Christian Melman out of Kent Roosevelt did have a pretty good day, 18 of 32 passes for 231 yards and a touchdown. Fortunately, just wasn't enough to beat Talmadge, so Talmadge again improves to 1-4, getting their first win of the season. Highland and Green, this was a pretty impressive game, very, very entertaining game, kind of back and forth. Tanner Montgomery out of Green had a really good day at 18 of 27, 251 yards, 3 touchdowns, very impressive. Jeremy McAleese, I hope I pronounced that right, probably didn't, but had 24 carries for 137 yards and a touchdown. Wow. Tyler Zielinski out of Highland went 7 for 15, 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. A lot of this coming in the third quarter. What happened here was Highland was actually down going into halftime, and they put on a rally. And Green had to come at late fourth quarter drive and an ensuing touchdown pass in order to beat Highland and stop that rally. So it was a close game right down to the end here. Sam Jenkins, also out of Highland, had 28 carries, 194 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So pretty impressive back and forth here between Green and Highland. Unfortunately, Green was just a little too much for Highland. Highland ends up losing that game. And my spotlight game was Aurora at Barberton. Barberton had another tough week. Really, really tough week. Nolan Sotka out of Aurora had a really, really good day, completing 12 of 14 passes, 122 yards. It wasn't easy, though. Barberton really put on the pressure. Soka was sacked several times and only rushed for 36 yards, which is well below his usual average. Ben Nelson, also out of Aurora, had a really good day, 134 yards on 20 carries. But, it was kind of a tale of two sides of the ball here for Aurora. They had a really decent, output by their offense, but Barberton's defense made it tough. But, the one thing that kind of saved them was Aurora's defense. The Green Men defense made it really, really tough. They held Brandon McCall, who has been lighting up the stat sheets, to 13 yards.
What?
13 yards for
What?
the game.
Oh.
That's something to hang your hat on. The entire defense of Aurora stepped up and realized that Brandon McCall was not going to beat them last week. So that was a really, really impressive effort. At one point, this was a close game. At one point, Barberton had cut the lead to 10-7 on the final play of the second quarter. But unfortunately, it just wasn't enough as Aurora made, again, it was a situation where Barberton came to play, but the team they were playing was just making plays when they weren't. And that's what it came down to. So, it's a tough 2-week stretch for Barberton. It really, really is. Aurora, again, is that team, as I mentioned off the top, is the other team that really kind of made a statement saying, hey, look, we beat Barberton. We're setting up for Copley going down the road. And I think that's where you really see these two teams is, what's going to decide this division is going to be the outcome of that Aurora-Copley game. And I'm really excited to see that down the road. I think it's about the same time as the Menor-Strongsville game, but I'm not 100% on that. I got to check the schedule.
You're right. I think it's week 8.
So it's definitely a lot of good performances in this division too, which I was really impressed with. Not just your normal, run-of-the-mill guys. I mean, Brandon McCall has been on Weston Bridges, they've been on my MVP list, but some newcomers come to the MVP list. So that's it's going to be fun to talk about that in the next segment. Let me kick it over to my cohort, my colleague, my partner in crime here,
my
covering
compadre,
covering the national division of the Suburban League. Ed, take it away.
All right, sounds good. We're going to start at Twinsburg. Brecksville Broadview Heights defeats host Twinsburg 27-0. The Bees do throw the shutout. Quarterback Luke Sternad threw for 240 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he rushed for another touchdown. All 3 of his touchdowns went to wide receiver Tyler Tupa, had a total of 6 catches for 187 yards. Tupa's 3 touchdowns covered 68, 29, and 64 yards.
Wow.
So they were definitely able to hit the big play there. The Bees defense played very, very stout defensively. They were able to hold Tay Gross and Twinsburg's offense to just 63 yards on the ground.
That's just the Bees' knees right there.
Man,
The
you were waiting to
Bees'
cue that up.
Yeah.
Well, Medina didn't help you out too much on that one, so
No,
I gotta give you that one.
I had it queued up for them, but
There we go.
They didn't help me out.
They really are the Bees' knees. The Bees are 5-0, while the Twinsburg Tigers drop down to 0-5. Moving on to Wadsworth. Wadsworth picks up their first win of the season with a 20. Yeah, good for them with a 28-7 home victory over the Cuyahoga Falls Black Tigers. All-Ohio running back Dan Weinerman carried the ball 24 times for 244 yards and 2 touchdowns. He will be an MVP candidate. Just go back to the first game. Luke Strenad and Tyler Tupa obviously are also MVP candidates. Dwayne Matthews of Cuyahoga Falls did have a 2-yard touchdown run, accounting for the Black Tigers' only score. Cuyahoga Falls drops to 0-5 overall, 0-2 in conference play, while Wadsworth improves to 1-4 overall and 1-1 in conference play. They really picked up the momentum, and they took that momentum from their close loss to Stowe the previous week, and really applied it against the Black Tigers and really imposed their will there. We move on to North Royalton. The Hudson Explorers absolutely ruined North Royalton's homecoming game, using 2 defensive touchdowns from Roman Moreno and 5 total touchdowns from quarterback Jackson Parker to beat the Bears 55-7.
Wow.
Roman Moreno scored an 80-yard fumble return, a 50-yard interception return, and also added a 9-yard touchdown reception just for good measure. So he had 3 total touchdowns, 2 defensive, 1 offensive. He'll be in the running for MVP for me. Quarterback Jackson Parker for Hudson rushed for 100 yards on 4 carries and 3 touchdowns, while going 6 for 8 passing for 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. Did you realize that the touchdown to touch ratio there?
No, my math is suspect. You know this.
Fair enough.
I mean, I imagine it's astronomical and amazing. Are
He
you
had
asking me to do it?
He had
Oh.
12 total offensive touches where he actually did either threw the ball or ran it, and he scored 5 touchdowns.
Well, that's just efficient.
That's quite efficient.
Is he old enough to play for the Browns?
He can join us anytime he wants. So Jackson Parker is a MVP candidate. North Royalton's Nick Coberly scored the Bears' only touchdown run, a 1-yard run in the second quarter. The Explorers moved to 4-1 overall, 2-0 in conference play, while the Bears dropped to 2-3 overall and 1-1 in conference play. The spotlight game of the week for me in the National Division saw Stowe Munro Falls travel to Macedonia to take on the Nordonia Knights. This game certainly did not disappoint as the teams combined for 102 points.
Wow.
Unfortunately for the host team, Stowe put up 65 to Nordonia's 37. Stowe's Jason Gobble, a mainstay on the MVP board, put 3 touchdowns on the board in the first half, helping the Bulldogs take a 24-14 lead at the half, including a 43-yard touchdown pass from wide receiver Logan Lindsay. Gobble also put up a 67-yard touchdown run later in the first quarter. Nordonia was able to keep within striking distance with quarterback Justin Post and running back Anthony Perrin providing the punch for the Knights. At the end of the third quarter, the Knights trailed 38-22, but Stowe was able to put up 27 points in the fourth quarter, including a 63-yard interception return for a touchdown by Jason Gobble's brother, Joe Gobble. So in all, Jason Gobble ran for 253 yards and 5 touchdowns and added a receiving touchdown.
It's a good night for the Gobbles.
Six touchdowns for Jason, 1 for Joe. That's insane, right?
That's pretty good.
For Nordonia, Justin Post put up 204 yards passing and 4 touchdowns for Nordonia. Running back Anthony Perrin had 27 carries for 200 yards and a touchdown also for the Knights. Both guys are also MVP candidates. 953 yards of total offense in this game. Stowe had 507. Nordonia had 446. Props to Ryan Isley for that stat. Stowe moves to 5-0 overall, 2-0 conference play, while Nordonia drops to 2-3 overall and 0-2 in conference play. So that was a good spotlight game to pick there. I actually got that one right there. So as you can see, Stowe is Stowe and Brecksville are the cream of the crop in this division, and it's just a matter of time. Week 9 is when this game's going down. So it just seems to me that these teams are just gonna continue putting up the stats until they face each other. Lots of computer points will be on the line when that happens, and probably the de facto Suburban League National Division Championship game.
I think a lot of these games have been fun to watch. I mean, still high scoring. We mentioned it even with all the film out there. It seems like these guys are putting up crazy numbers, whether it's a running back or quarterback. But it's nice to see, Brecksville put up a 0 on the board. And some of both American and National Conference or Division are you see some defensive games where teams can't score or have low scoring. Wadsworth only let up 7 points. Yeah. But I think you're starting to see, like you had Stowe. Aurora is always a team that seems like they're doing well. The Barbertons and there's Copley especially.
I think Copley's asserting its dominance on this division right now.
Yeah, they're not messing around. They're averaging over at least 45 points a game. It looks like.
I mean, and none of these games have been close. I mean, it's been an offensive explosion for Copley, But also, I'm extremely impressed with their defense. It's easy to put up points, but if you can stop people from putting up points, it makes the victory all that much more, convincing. And I think, when you look at teams like Stowe, and I think we're in the same boat there, where you see Stowe is just kind of heads and shoulders above where everybody else is in the sense of who they're playing. You know what I mean? It's kind of those are the cream of the crop teams, and it makes sense. Right about week 5 is where you see the best teams kind of come out and make a statement, and towards the second half of the season.
I mean, do you see any teams maybe either competing or giving a scare to Copley at any point this season?
I do, and we can get into that as we do the look ahead.
Okay.
But I think there's some pitfalls out there definitely for all these teams, for both Copley, and Aurora, and even Barberton, who's not. I mean, they're 0-2 in the division, but they're not out of it. I mean, but they have to have some things fall their way in order for it to go their way. But they're still in the hunt for a playoff spot. They're still looking to make that jump and have a good season. So I think there are some pitfalls, and we'll lay those out in the next segment. We'll definitely we'll look at those, and we'll also talk about the MVPs. And were you gonna go over the standings of the National Division? I can go over the American Division for the folks out there.
Yeah, I can do that. I tried to. So right now, Brecksville and Stowe are both 5-0. They're both 2-0 in conference. Hudson 4-1 overall, 2-0 in the conference. North Warriorton 2-3 overall, 1-1 in the conference. Wadsworth 1-4 overall, 1-1 in the conference. I think you're going to start seeing Wadsworth kind of matriculate up the standings there as the season moves on. Nordonia 2-3 overall, 0-2 in the conference. Twinsburg and Cuyahoga Falls bringing up the rear, 0-5 overall, 0-2 in the conference, and I don't really see those. No offense to those teams, but I don't really see those teams beating anybody else besides each other in that division.
Yeah, and looking at the American side of things, Aurora and Copley are both undefeated, 5-0 overall, 2-0 in the division. Highland is 1-0, in the division, 3-2 overall. Barberton is 3-2 overall, but unfortunately they're 0-2 in the division. Talmadge has one win, putting them in right now in fourth place, just again because they have that one win in conference, and they're 1-4 overall. Revere is 2-3 overall, again 0-2 in the conference, and Kent Roosevelt is 1-4 and also 0-2 in the conference. So, Highland is that X-marked team because they both get they get a chance at both the top teams. And that's the thing going forward. But we'll go over that in the next segment. I just want to give everyone an update of where everyone stands.
Yeah, we have we'll look at the games ahead in Week 6, but right now it's time. Sports on Tap now gives its conference MVPs, presented by Z's Cream and Bean, located at 2706 Boston Road in Hinckley, Ohio. All right, and that was our conference MVP promo, and want to welcome Z's Cream and Bean on board for presenting that. And guys, it's our conference MVPs for each league and conference now. Let's start with the Greater Cleveland Conference and Josh Jeff.
Well, I had some pretty good nominees for MVP. One was Chris Collins, the running back from Euclid, 31 attempts, 217 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tadas Tadarunas, anytime you score 5 touchdowns, you get MVP consideration. But I went with Brunswick quarterback Nick Horton.
There you go, Blue Devils.
Nice.
The Brunswick Blue Devils.
That?
He's been doing pretty well all season. He had a pretty solid game, 97 rushing yards, 122 yards passing, 3 touchdowns total. But a young team like that, struggling to get its first victory, I saw this as a revenge game for Brunswick against Elyria. And they came out and they played tough. And you knew, we've been talking about it the past few weeks, it's just a matter of time before Brunswick puts it all together and gets that first victory. And you know what they did against a pretty decent Elyria team. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to Brunswick quarterback Nick Horton for my Week 5 Greater Cleveland Conference MVP.
Congratulations to Nick Horton. A great performance by him.
Yeah,
and the Brunswick
solid.
Blue Devils getting off
Solid.
the schneid.
Solid performance. It's good for a young team like that to get to taste the victory. And we'll see where this takes them the rest of the season.
And now we'll move to the Southwestern Conference, which I had a decision to make. I had running back DeMario McCall make the finals with 213 yards rushing. He also had 4 touchdowns. Or I had Amherst linebacker Todd Hastings, who had 24 tackles in the loss. And, I want to go defensive player, but McCall, I thought, had such a huge impact in his game. 213 yards on 14 carries.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good average.
Rather efficient.
Yep.
And 3 rushing touchdowns and 1 receiving touchdown. So running back to Mario McCall of North Ridgeville is my conference MVP, presented by Z's Cream and Bean.
For the American division in the Suburban League, I had several MVP-type performances. Going to start off with, obviously, Copley's Austin Brenner going 13 of 14, 399 yards and 6 touchdowns. Talmadge's Nate Adolph. They get off the schneid, and this guy had 39 carries for 217 yards and a touchdown.
Solid.
That was the workhorse for Talmadge. Yep. And then we had Kent Roosevelt's Christian Melman put up a really good day of 18 of 32, 231 yards and a touchdown in a losing effort, unfortunately, but still a pretty good day for that quarterback. I picked up Tyler Zielinski out of Highland. He had 7 of 15, 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also from Highland, Sam Jenkins, 28 carries, 194 yards, 2 touchdowns. Big day for that guy too. Out of Aurora, I had two MVP candidates. Nolan Sotka. Again, I'm butchering that name, and I apologize. 12 of 14, 122 yards and a touchdown. Also, I want to give a shout-out to Aurora's defensive effort. A guy like Brandon McCall is a special kind of running back, and if you can limit that guy to 13 yards on 7 carries, you're doing something right. So my hat's off to the defense of Aurora. Unfortunately, when you put up gaudy numbers, you get my attention. Austin Brenner, congratulations. You pitched a near-perfect game here. 13 of 14, 399 yards, 6 touchdowns. Have a chocolate milk, watch the film, move on to the next one, buddy. You had a good week.
Unreal. Congratulations.
Yeah,
man. That's
yeah.
an unreal effort.
I mean, I looked at
Unreal.
everything, and I'm like, you can't say no to it. I mean, 6 touchdowns. What more does a guy
That's
have to
crazy.
I'll be honest with you. I'm in the same boat here
Yeah.
with my MVP pick. I will go over quickly some of the candidates. From Bruxville, Broadview Heights, quarterback Luke Strenad, 240 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, and another on the ground. Tyler Tupa, 6 catches, 187 yards with 3 touchdowns. Wadsworth running back Dan Weinerman, 24 carries, 244 yards, and 2 scores. Hudson has 2 candidates. Roman Moreno, 2 defensive touchdowns and a 9-yard touchdown reception. Hudson quarterback Jackson Parker had a total of many touchdowns. He had 5 total touchdowns, 3 on the ground, 2 through the air. Unfortunately for all of them, it's going to go back to Jason Gobble from Stowe. And
Gobble, gobble.
he had 253 yards rushing, 5 rushing touchdowns, 1 receiving touchdown in a pretty big game. I mean, that was a game that Nordonia wouldn't go away, and Gobble just kept pushing them back, and he just did it. He really took it upon himself to, with the help of his teammates, to of course seal that victory. I was really thinking about giving it to one of the 2 Hudson guys, but I'm taking the strength of schedule kind of in consideration here. Stowe played a tougher opponent in Nordonia than Hudson played in North Royalton, and like I said, 6 touchdowns. That gets my attention. Stowe's Jason Gobble is the National Division MVP for the Suburban League this week.
Is that the second time he's been MVP for you this year?
I believe it is, yes. If not second,
Gobble.
For that, the second, then the third, one of the 2 teams.
Very impressive, and still, a lot of these MVP candidates and MVPs are just putting up crazy numbers.
I also want to say, I think this is the second time Austin Brenner has been my MVP.
Has it?
I think he was MVP week 1. Not 100% on that. It may have been Brandon McCall, not 100%, but.
Well, those are
congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations to all those players for being conference MVP, sponsored or actually presented by Z's Cream and Bean. They're at 2706 Boston Road in Hinckley, Ohio, so visit them up there. And right now, it's going to say we're off air, but we're coming right back as we're going to give you our Week 6 look ahead to see some of the matchups going on there and our spotlight games. We'll go over those all coming up. We're Sports on Tap. This is our high school football coverage presented by RRT Productions.
Train coming, full speed and unstopping this. Everybody happy. Y'all, band, break it down for me.